So it is. It is very, very likely. Maybe next week. Part of me hopes not, because, like I say, I'm going to be in Belgium next week for a conference. So hopefully it doesn't happen next week. But very, very soon, if not the not too distant future, probably after the Tiverton and Wakefield by-elections, which so far are certainly not going well. I mean, the Wakefield candidate for the Conservatives has had to come out and said that no, he looks the correct way at children, not like the previous MP. So, complete and absolute car crash going on in Wakefield for their Conservative candidate over there at the moment. But needless to say, these both by-elections are going to be happening, I've just heard, on the same day. So if Tiverton goes to the Lib Dems and the Labour and Wakefield goes to Labour, which from what I've definitely seen of the poll numbers in Wakefield, that is almost certainly what is going to happen there in Wakefield at the moment. I have no idea what's going down in Tiverton. I haven't seen any polls, but it is more likely that it has a very good chance of flipping over to the Lib Dems. And as I've said before, if you're in Wakefield, vote Labour. If you are down there for that by-election down in Tiverton, vote Lib Dem. Encourage your friends, encourage your family, get out there, work colleagues, etc. Whoever you can, get them out and get them out to vote. Even if necessary, you have to actually literally drive them physically to the poll stations to do it. It will be worth it. So, very likely, as we've said before, the top two contenders, even though they've had their own, shall we say, scandals, is probably going to be Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. They are still the top two contenders. And as I have continuously said right from the very beginning, if Liz Truss gets down to the final two, she will walk it. She will win it, because that is when the Conservative Party membership, not the MPs, also get involved in having that vote as well. And as she is the most popular member of the non-parliamentary Conservative Party by a country mile, she will walk it. But of course, as we've said, you can't predict what might happen in interviews during the actual leadership election itself. Of course, she might do really badly, but if it was literally to happen like today or tomorrow, that election, she would walk it. Honestly, it's insane. And of course, you are now going to see people, I think, start to attack not just Rishi Sunak, but as we have seen very recently, Dominic Cummings has gone after Liz Truss in a massive, massive way. So we're going to have a look at what he's had to say about all this, and then, well, we'll have a discussion about it afterwards. But of course, as is always, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and one affiliation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there's the YouTube subscription button. You know the drill by now. So let's get on into this then. So this comes from The Independent, the title of Liz Truss would be even worse Prime Minister than Boris Johnson, says Dominic Cummings. And I have to say, I do sort of very much agree with Dominic Cummings on this. We have not seen anything to suggest that Liz Truss would be a amazing prime minister. I have to say to that. She's shown no. Should we say she's shown no ability other than her, knowledge of cheese and international pork markets, not, shall we say, the most highly sought after qualifications probably for being the PM. Anyway, let's get on to this. So Liz Truss would make an even worse Prime Minister than Boris Johnson, former Downing Street advisor Dominic Cummings has said. The strategist who has been pushing Conservative MPs to oust his former boss says that the Foreign Secretary was as close to probably crackers as anybody he'd ever met in Parliament. Glowing recommendation from Dominic Cummings there. Despite the steady flow of backbenchers calling for change at number 10, Mr. Cummings said that many Tories had convinced themselves there was no one better than Johnson to lead the party, saying the Tory party itself is quite rotten now. And the sign of that is that they can't even think of anyone better than Boris, who is clearly just completely shot, he said in an interview with the Unheard website. Also saying, they're collectively saying, if we get rid of him, we might get someone worse. It says a lot about the current state of the Tory party. And that's not the first time we've heard that. We've heard that from Jacob Rees-Mogg. If you may remember, just a couple of weeks ago, we went over the interview, the absolute car crash of interview with him, with Julia Hart-Brewer, who is very much a conservative, news pundit on talk radio. And when she brought up the idea of getting rid of Boris, Jacob turns around and just goes, well, there's no one better to lead the party than Boris. To which she said exactly the same thing. Doesn't that point a very poor picture of the Conservative Party if you do not think there is any other better leader than Boris Johnson? So the Conservatives are in a proper mess, and they have put themselves into this by, well, essentially allowing the right-wing libertarians of their party to take control through, well, Brexit, to say the least. Anyway, he continued on. He added, and they actually could get somebody worse. Liz Truss would be even worse than Boris. She's about probably close to crackers as anybody I've met in Parliament. The former PM's concierge said the Chancellor Rishi Sunak had blown himself up and also dismissed the Cabinet Minister Michael Gove's chances of becoming leader, making it more likely that Mr. Johnson will somehow survive. I don't want to say no chance, but I think Rishi Sunak is out of the running, he said in an interview with Susan Moore. If they're going to be thinking who can win the next election, whatever you might think of Michael Gove's abilities, he's not a loved character. Mr. Cummings was also criticised the Partygate report from the top civil servant, Sue Gray, saying it was a bit brazen to ignore the alleged ABBA party in Johnson's Downing Street flat on the 13th of November 2020. And we've sort of been over that. Sue Gray, in her report, said she didn't want to get involved because she might prejudice the police investigation. So, whitewash or not, I do sort of understand her the hesitation of doing that. So I think it's a valid reason for not wanting to do it. I think it's more on the Met for not properly investigating rather than her. But if there does come a point where she does go back and reinvestigates it, I'm fine with that. I'm fine for having another Sue Gray report, or Sue Gray Part 2, the Abbey, the Abbey years, as they say. But yeah. Anyway, he goes on saying he was claimed that dozens of staff downstairs could hear the loud music in the flat on the evening he left number 10, with Cummings saying all the police had to do was interview any one of them to find out. He added that Miss Gray had stopped investigating the party at the flat because the police got involved, even though the police didn't then investigate it. So basically, they have just sort of said, F this, we're not going to get involved with the after party on the night of the 13th. The Vote Leave campaign mastermind said that he did not feel bad about going to work for Mr. Johnson, saying that if we didn't go in and sort it out, Brexit wouldn't have happened, and there would have been a second referendum. However, Mr. Cummings said he knew there was, quote, a reasonable chance that this goes tits up, before repeating his attacks on Carrie Johnson for injecting more craziness into Downing Street. He also said that Mr. Johnson was broke after his divorce and couldn't even afford a refurbishment of the Downing Street flat. He claimed the PM told him, I want to get donations in to do it, but obviously it's bad PR, so I have to keep it quiet. And again, there is very likely to be another round of, as we said before, Dominic Cummings may be going to give testimony again, potentially in the not too distant future, to a different parliamentary standards report. So probably look out for that when that happens. It also comes as Steve Johnson, the MP for Carlisle, became the latest Tory to call for Mr. Johnson to resign over Partygate revelations, telling colleagues to facilitate a vote of no confidence in his leadership under the party rules. We know how the 922 committee works by now. Close to up to 30 Tory MPs have publicly called on the MP to stand down, but more than 40 MPs have openly questioned his future, although not all of them have said they've written to Sir Graham Bradley. The former leader, William Hague, said that Mr Johnson was now, quote, in real trouble, and predicted a vote of leadership could come as early as next week. So, more basically what we've heard this week, that Johnson is indeed in trouble. Could a leadership election happen next week? Possible. The next two by-elections almost certainly will guarantee that Mr Johnson doesn't have a vote of no confidence, purely for the fact that if they lose in those two seats, then the nightmare scenario, which I think we've touched on before, the nightmare scenario is a complete and utter Tory collapse of the next general election. So what happens there? Well, basically, not only do they lose all their red wall seats back to Labour, but they also lose what the Lib Dems have dubbed the blue wall, and they lose a load of those seats to the Lib Dems. That is what is known as the complete and utter Tory collapse, which would leave them being the third largest party in Parliament, which would be a huge, huge historic event if that happened. Imagine the Conservative Party becoming the third largest party in Parliament. That is simply unheard of. But that is the Tory nightmare. And that is scenarios that have been played out in Tory HQ for quite some time. So certainly these two by-elections, if the Sue Gray report has not prompted many of the Tory MPs, especially this week, to go put their letters in, those by-elections coming up almost will certainly prompt them to go and put their letters in and hope that at least they can get a better leader and at least try and reverse the very bad direction that Johnson has been driving the party in before. But also we've said there will be, especially appearing at that, well, not just at that Conservative leadership election. We've already seen the split happening with Jacob Rees-Mogg and other Brexiteers going after the ELM system, wanting to get rid of it. That's the environmental land management system that we talked about last week. They want to get rid of that. And that is very much ideologically driven by the right libertarian wing of the party. That's what they want to get rid of. They want to get rid of subsidies, unless it's they like it, of course, then they can keep the subsidies. But anything like that, they want to get rid of. They want to get rid of all regulation. So make no mistake, the leadership election is going to be an absolute bloodbath. It is going to be a knockout slugfest of the likes of which we have not seen in this country ever. And it will be a real fight for the future direction of the Tory party, with the more right-wing moderates trying to maybe pull the party back towards sort of like the David Cameron direction, or again, the Brexiteers, the right-wing libertarians of the party, pushing the party even further to the right. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.